I'm so glad that you all agreed to show up and participate in this conversation. Thank you very much, each of you, for giving me a little bit of your time today. Each of you are important to me, and I am sure that the ideas, the thoughts, and conversations that we're going to make happen in this conversation, in this topic, in this discussion today, are going to be important to others as well. Hey, for everybody who's watching this, wherever you're seeing it, I'm Teddy Burriss. I'm a social media strategist, predominantly focused on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Quora, and I am your host. So I am not an expert in this conversation. I'm your host, but I want to introduce you to 4 friends of mine, and because they are important in this conversation, because they bring perspectives that are important. First of all, I have Kristen Dokas. Kristen's in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. She's a branding, social media, and influencer marketing consultant. Kristen, thanks a lot for coming and joining us today.
Thanks, Teddy. Glad to be here.
Good, good. And then I have Melissa Hughes, and Melissa is in Naples, Florida. Melissa, I had to close my eyes, look at my map to get that down right. And she is, listen to this, she is a neuroscience geek and a studier of human behavior. Melissa, thank you for joining us today.
It's my pleasure, Teddy.
Cool, cool. And then I have Mr. Mark Kelly. Mark is a social media advocate. He loves social media. He's a Google Ads professional, and his role in this conversation is not only the insights he wants to share, but he's also a little of a rabble rouser. Mark, thanks for being here, buddy.
It's my pleasure.
Cool. And what's the phrase? Last but not least is Philip Oakley. Philip also has stated repeatedly in different conversations that he loves social media. He's back on Twitter now, at least for a while, I'm assuming. He's a brand strategist, and listen to this. He is a questioner and a thought provoker. Philip, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Teddy.
Yeah. So the conversation, I don't know if I really come up with a real sustainable, a real meaningful title, but it's simply this. Why do people do what they do on social media? Now, that's a big question. We're going to talk about it in some context at the human level, about humans and why humans do what they do. And by the way, just to be totally transparent and honest, we're not here to fix anything. That's not why we're having this conversation. We're having this conversation just to understand a little bit more about why do people what they do. And I'm a firm believer that if we, to follow Philip's style, if we ask enough questions and we discover insights and ideas from others, it can help us to better understand and then to respond or not. So that's what the conversation's all about. Why do people do what they do on social media? I'm labeling that we're having this conversation so we can understand. Kristen, what are your thoughts on why are we having this conversation?
Because of the last 5-6 years.
What happened?
Quite honestly. Yeah, I think it's one of those, and I saw, because one of the things I also do is educate parents on technology, right? And one of the things that I notice with kids, which, first and foremost, let's not give them too much grief, because that frontal lobe of their brain is not mature enough, right? So they've got a little bit of an excuse. We're talking about grown adults who all of a sudden become keyboard warriors. They are behind a screen and no one can see them. And they say things that they would never in a million years say to some of them probably still would, but for the most of us, all 5 of us sitting here probably would never say the kind of things that people say behind their keyboards or behind their phones that they would never say to someone's face.
Yeah.
And that's where we are.
I'm with you. And I'm also with you that, we got to give kids a break, because we're giving them these tools and then they're following our example, Philip, what about yourself? Why do you think what's the benefit of this conversation, or why are we having it from your perspective?
One thing about humans is we are still animals. We're still pack animals. We're still tribal. We're looking for connections. We're looking for people to protect us. There's safety in herds. And if we can find people who think like us, act like us, then we become more brave, right? It's harder to stand out in a crowd when you're by yourself. So, often you see these opportunities on social media to speak up and say, that's not right. What you're sharing is wrong. That's, fake. That's a lie. It's really hard when you're by yourself, right?
Yeah.
But if you go in and try to really understand the reason that people are thinking these things and why they're sharing bullshit or why they're believing something that's spoon-fed to them, start there and understand why they might be doing something. You can have different types of conversations as opposed to attacking them. And it's really easy on social media just to attack first.
Yeah.
So
I think I mentioned to you in a previous discussion, I was reading the book Atomic Habits. And in that book, it also talked about the habits we create are often influenced by the tribe that we hang out with. And that aligns well with why we do what we're doing on social media. So Mark, how about yourself? Now, by the way, Mark, I have you on here as the rabble rouser because one of the reasons I decided to have this conversation was because of something that I saw you do on, I don't know, I think it's Facebook. And I called you up and asked you, why were you doing that? Would you share a little bit about why do you think this conversation is important and maybe a little bit about why you were doing what you were doing?
Yeah, I can go to the why I was doing what I was doing, which is I've evolved, as many of us have over the years. So for business purpose, branding purposes, I don't post anything anymore unless I think it is so obvious. I don't post anything political. And we can, when you talk tribal, you're talking, sports is tribal, but I can mock my Dallas Cowboy fan friends and we just talk crap to each other. No one's angry at the end of the day, except for I know one guy who gets angry on every topic. So, but usually, it's politics. I see some of this sometimes in the marketing discussions, but I don't post anything anymore unless it's helpful, useful, promotional, but nothing that I think is going to display where I stand on an issue one way or the other, because I like all my clients, not just half of them. And I like all my family and friends, even the ones that, you know how it is. But specifically, you posted something, Teddy, and you were doing it on purpose, as I find out later. And the only thing I like to do for my own personal pleasure, I will admit, is occasionally troll someone. And so I have a dry sense of humor, generally speaking. It plays well in certain social media situations.
Yeah.
Depending on your definition of well.
Yeah. And you don't do any trolling with your brand attached to it. I'm sure of that.
No, absolutely not. I mean, some companies, their brand aligns with their politics and it makes sense. For most people, I'm like, and that's part of the conversation later, is I'm just like, dude, don't do that, or do that, don't do that.
Yeah, I'm with you. So yeah, good stuff. And and I'm with you. There's been a switch that was flipped that opened up the door for more and more people, to use Kristen's words, to become a keyboard warrior. And that's my keyboard is my shield. I can do whatever I want behind my shield. And that switch can never be turned off, I believe, once it's turned on. So, all right, here's another question I want to ask you guys. So what are some different reasons, thoughts, justifications that people have in the context of why they do what they do on social media? Everybody knows that this conversation is all about the crap that's out there, the noise that's out there, the hatred that's out there, the animosity and all of that. But, I think some of these thoughts and ideas and perspectives people have also apply to the good stuff. But, we're grateful for that. So Melissa, what do you think is a reason for us to have this conversation?
Well, I think coming out of the pandemic where we all experienced this ridiculous isolation and I think, social media kind of became a lifeline for so many of us. Certainly technology in general became a lifeline for all of us. When kids were using technology for school, we were all, having Zoom meetings out the wazoo. And I think the interesting piece to me is that the loneliness and connectedness are not external conditions, but they're psychological states. And what we know is that they're directly correlated. We, back in the 90s, when the opportunity to connect via technology started to grow, we had this whole construct called the internet paradox. And what they saw was there was this big correlation between increased internet usage and increased loneliness. That was in the 90s. And then in 2010, there was a research study done and they asked all these people, do you think your life and your relationships are going to be better in 10 years? This was in 2010, looking to 2020, which was just 2 years ago. And overwhelmingly people said, absolutely. And if you look back at the last 5 years, I'm not alone in saying some days I want Facebook off my phone. I don't even want the app on my phone, right? So I think one of the reasons that people have drawn to it is because it is safe for people to be exactly what they're feeling in that moment. And there are no real repercussions, right? You can unfriend, you can unfollow, you can, I think that the last couple years have made all of that, have given people permission to behave badly, right?
Hey, Melissa, you said something a moment ago, excuse me, Teddy, about not having repercussions. And earlier, Teddy asked Mark about, he doesn't post under his company's brand. Does that matter? Like I know people I've earmarked. It doesn't matter who you are, if you're on the company dime or not, if you're posting for your company, if you're an ass, you have sold yourself out. We know you're an ass.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll
I
add
think there
on
are
to that.
repercussions. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll add on to what Philip is saying, which is true. I remember back in 2008, when I first started, my company was Twin City Sales and Marketing, and Mark Schaefer, a very trusted colleague and mentor of mine, I was kind of going with this whole thing because people thought my name was Sam, not that the Sam was for sales and marketing. And in a discussion with Mark Schaefer, I'm like, what do I do? And Tracy Myers, which is a local man here too, wrote a book, and this is so true. You are the brand. You are the brand, stupid. And, if people may not necessarily know my company name, but they know my name. So I am the brand of my company. And if I go and mouth off, it's going to come right back to me. And I've seen that as well, Philip. I agree with you. I've seen that several times.
Yeah.
You're not incorrect. And actually, I think on social media, typically the CEO is the brand or the person is the brand. So I do almost all my posting on my own personal social media. No one cares about my agency, Facebook page or anything like that. It's all typically me. So I don't post anything that I think is inflammatory unless I'm specifically doing it to start discussion, but it would never be on politics. It might be on paid search versus SEO or something like that, but not on a political issue or something that would be of that level.
And I
Mark, I think I deleted more posts than I wrote between the years of 2017 and 2019. So yeah, that's how I can understand.
I came up with an edict years ago, and then I try to live by it. I got a bucket full of edicts I try to live by, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But one of them is this: never do, say, or engage on social media in any way I don't want to be seen, heard, or perceived of in life. Now, as you said, Philip, I've deleted a bunch of posts. I've hit that backspace and delete key a million times, to the point it's almost as wore out as the A and the S is, to keep myself out of that trouble. So, and Melissa,
can I just add one? Let me add one thing to that, because I think that there is, from a branding perspective, there's often an opportunity to show this is how we civilly engage in conversations, right? We don't have to always be the what not to do. Sometimes we can be the what to do.
Oh, Lordy.
Right? How we respond. So.
Wow, go figure. I love it. I love it. Melissa, when you were talking about, you said something to the effect of, there are days I really wish Facebook wasn't on my phone. And I saw Kristen go, yeah. And then that made me think about, imagine if we started a campaign and the movie was called something Network in the 70s. And one of the statements, this guy ranting and raving, he goes, I'm sick and tired of it. I'm not going to take it anymore.
Take it anymore.
You know, can you imagine starting that campaign, Kristen?
True confession. And Teddy, you and Philip know how deeply into the social media world I am. 3 weeks ago, I, for the first time in my life, deleted the Facebook app off of my phone.
Yeah.
And I did it largely as a test because most of the stuff I need to deal with, I can either get through my third-party posting app or through the business suite.
Right.
The thing that I really wish they hadn't gotten rid of was the groups app, because that's usually where I was spending the majority of my time on Facebook. But I just found that just, watching a television show or something, I was doing this. And I'm like, why are you doing this? You of all people know better than this. And it just, and can I tell, you know how you get if you have an iPhone, how you get your screen time? Y'all.
I hate that.
No, I mean, how much it decreased. It just, and it wasn't because I was doing it because I needed to find something out. So right now, like, I go into Facebook in the morning, look at the memories, and I'm out of there. Unless I need to do something for one of my clients, I'm out. I have 14 years worth of memories of my children that are no longer living in my house that I go, oh God, I remember when they were here.
Now I haven't taken it off my phone yet, but that's a good idea. I don't have an objection to doing that. I got to pull it. Maybe I need to pull the trigger, but it does not run in my browsers. Does not. I go into it, do what I need to do for my clients, get the heck out. So yeah, I want to
well, the reason I did is because I always have my phone with me. I always have my phone with me. I don't always have my computer with me, right? And so if I need to look on Facebook, now I physically and this is personal, not business stuff. I physically have to get up and go and actually do it.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And I'm too lazy.
Yeah. Read the book Atomic Habits. That's a good reason to get rid of bad habits. I'm too lazy. All right, here's the next one. The next one is discuss. I want to have a discussion about why people do this. And there's a million reasons, but let's go around the room and talk about, why do you think people do what they do? And I'll mix it up a little bit. And Philip, let's start with you. Why do people do what they do? And I want to put parameters around that.
So I'll put a parameter. Let's go back to the negative thing. Why do we say shit to strangers that we don't think there's going to be repercussions? And Melissa, help me. There was a study several years ago where they put people in a room and they gave them a button. And they said, push this button and we'll give you $100. And they pushed the button. And they said, well, what happens on the other end? They said, well, someone receives an electric shock. And they were appalled. They were appalled. Well, we'll push it again. We'll give you $100. No, like, I don't know this person. Okay, we'll give you $200. $250. Well, is it really going to hurt them? Okay, I'll push the button. And I've got my denominations wrong. Like, it was like $5, $20, $50. But there was a point where I don't actually feel the repercussions from hurting that person, so I don't care, right? I don't recognize there may be some sort of blowback on me, or someone might be pushing a button for me 5 minutes from now in this chair I'm sitting in, right? And so I'm not saying anyone in this call, nor myself, but we often do that. We often think, I'm just going to unload my shit, excuse my French, I've said it a few times today. I'm going to unload my anger and things that affected me this week on someone because I'm not going to see the repercussions on that person. Yeah. And on the receiving end of that, I think it's important to realize we all have our crap we're going through.
Yeah.
And if I watch this person and look for patterns, they're not always like this. Why are they doing this? Why are they acting that way? And if they are, and I think it may have been Mark, you said there was always some guy who was always angry on his posts. I'm walking away from that person, either on social media or a real party, right? But most of us, we have a bad day or a bad instance or a bad oyster. And you know what? We'll have another conversation another day.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's because we don't see the repercussions from our actions until it hurts us.
Yeah. How do I get to be a part of that study on the button side, Philip?
Melissa, are you familiar with that? Does that sound familiar at all?
I am, and I'm trying to remember the name of that study. It's fascinating, and there were several studies that kind of were offshoots from that. Part of it was, it all kind of stemmed from the prisoner study, that famous prisoner study, and so there were variations of that. But now you've poked my brain, and I want to go find those studies and read up on those.
It was also.
Go ahead.
I was going to say one quick note. There was also something to do with how things rise, like fascism. Like how did World War II happen? How did so many people end up in concentration camps while normal citizens stood around and watched it happen without saying something about it? And it's because it's not me. It's not hurting me yet. It's not a big deal yet until it actually reaches that point where we can't ignore it. It's too late. Anyway.
Yeah. It ain't
I
me.
do a
It's
lot of
not hurting me. Yeah.
Yeah, I do a lot of volunteer work with, I've been a guardian ad litem, and I'm an advocate in the court system for children who have been, it's a personal passion, has nothing to do with what I do professionally, but, I work with these teenagers who have been removed from their homes for neglect or abuse and are in the foster care system. And we have these conversations all the time, and I say, every single thing you put out there, ask yourself, do I want my future fill in the blank to see this? Do I want my future family members? Do I want my future boss? Do I want my future, whoever to see this? And, I've had a lot of conversations, and to your point, Philip, it's so far away from them. Like they're posting so many things that like 100 posts from now, they don't remember what that last, nasty gram was. But I also think in some strange way, for the contrarians who are the angry ones, who post the things out there that are just really meant to create waves, because we've all seen those posts and you go, the only purpose for that post is to piss people off, right? And in those cases, I think people have developed this kind of need to be relevant in the conversation. And that's the way to do it, because the more shock and awe you can put out there, the more outrage you can garner, then the more relevant you are, the more people see you, even if it's seeing you in a negative light.
Until you go past that certain point, and then your television show is being sued and you're going to close down. But anyway, that's a whole other conversation.
Melissa, it happens so often. People are not only looking for a tribe, they're often looking for a messiah. They're looking for someone who has the answers. Can someone tell me what to do, what decision to make, what direction to point? And unfortunately, it is, there's actually some good contrarians because they make us think, as opposed to, just throwing a grenade in the room and running. But it's those people who come up with those outlandish ideas. They're sometimes so outlandish, it's hard to say, wait, what? But people will follow that because they're looking for someone with answers. And so many people pretend to have the answers, and it's easy snake oil.
Yeah.
Especially during times of uncertainty. And we've certainly had those the last few years, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting, kind of what you were saying, Melissa, too, is, again, working with kids, right? At the high school level, one of the things that I've worked with them on is reputation management, because of, especially athletes, those that are going into it looking for if there's any potential for them to have scholarships. I have this conversation with them over and over again. I'm like, I have seen too many kids lose scholarships because of something stupid that they posted on social media. And, again, it's like, especially at that age, it's like, it'll never happen to me. It'll never happen to me. And then we watched it a couple of years ago happen in my daughter's high school. And all of a sudden they're like, oh shit. And, talk about the horse leaving the barn. There is no getting that back. And, another on the kids side of it too, something I see with my daughters who are young adults is, one of my aunts is extremely inflammatory. She is that grenade tosser, right? And my kids, it's frustrating to me because my girls I've always raised them to be critical, independent thinkers. They have their own points of view, and nothing will chap me more than them putting something out there, their beliefs, of which I told them, like, I don't care what you believe in as long as you've done the research. And it's your opinion, not your friends, not your and then they just these particular family members will turn around and just crap all over them. And I'm like, now what we're telling these kids is like, don't ever say what you really think, because there's going to be somebody to come along and there's part of it to be able to stand up for yourself. But it's like, at that point, we're talking social media, they're going to be like, why bother? Why even say what I think? Why even? And so I just find it to be so disheartening and demeaning and unencouraging for any of us to try and say what we truly think, because we're going to try and do it in a respectful and intelligent way. And then you've got these people that are in. It's very frustrating, which is why I find myself, even when I post so infrequently now. Yeah. I just don't even do it anymore. Yeah. It's just not a party I want to be at anymore. Yeah. You can find me on TikTok watching German Shepherds.
All right. So Mark, one more quick perspective on why do people do what they do? What do you want to share?
I've got a few things, so I'll talk to them real quickly. First of all, I think it's just, I'm not the trained person on the call, but there's just a need to be heard. People have a need to be heard. And some people always need to be heard. You know those people, but it's much freer. And it's also a much broader group. If you've got a large number of friends, you know that information is being broadcast out there. I think the other thing about it is that we look at people and say, how could you be such an idiot? You're one of those idiots that believes that. Well, the problem is, so are we, because we're all influenced by the media, we're influenced by our peer groups, we're influenced by our bias. So we think they're idiots. And they're looking at us the same way. One movie, two screens, or however you say that. I think the other thing that we have to take into consideration is the algorithms are designed to create this sort of conflict. They don't want fewer people commenting. They don't want fewer people posting. They want more people. And the algorithm's designed to it could bring out the best, but it often brings out the worst.
Yeah. Well,
we react to fear more than anything.
Mm-hmm. You tell me this is all about money? That's a conversation for another day. But yeah, yeah, I'm with you. So, I think I have a big tribe, and I love my tribe. I heard Terry Bradshaw on a TikTok video the other day said something about his a future son-in-law. He's not quite in the circle yet, and so I've got a few people who are not quite in the circle, and a few who are being removed from the circle, but very infrequently, because I'm pretty purposeful about who I let into my tribe. But I have to accept that there are people in my tribe who have different opinions than I do. And I have to accept that there are some of these people who express their opinions in ways I wouldn't express it.
Well, and you'd have to question yourself if there were not, you should question yourself if there are not people in your tribe who disagree with you.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's a tenet of mine that I live by too. You need to have people in your lives who are way different than you. Otherwise, all you're going to do is be the same rock you always are. So, but then
it comes down to the old adage of, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And that's, I think, the biggest issue that most of us see these days. I love having people of differing opinions in my circle. I love it. If they're not respectful, not so much, and they're gone.
Yeah.
Well, and how they argue too, right? Argue to learn, not argue to win.
Right.
More people are more concerned about winning than being right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, real good. We could go on for a long time about this, but let's move on to the next topic. And that is there something that we could do or not to help those that we care about who get pulled into that trap of being an idiot on social media? I had to say it that way, Melissa. You can define idiot to whatever level, however way you want, but is there something we could do, and or should we try to help those that we care about who get on social media and looks like they're making fools of themselves?
Well, I'll start on this one. I mean, as it relates to the conversations that we have with our young people, I think we have to keep having those conversations with our young people because their brain is not done cooking yet, and they're going to make all kinds of mistakes before they head out there into the world. And, you know, I'll say it as many times as I need to say it to the 13, 14, 15-year-old who is screwing up.
Yeah.
That said, to the 30-year-old, 40-year-old, or 50-year-old out there who is screwing up, I have come to this place where it's not my job to monitor what's out there being shared. One of the reasons that I got to this just place that I couldn't stand Facebook anymore is because I saw so many things that were so untrue being shared and commented, and every comment gave it more oxygen and, you know, all of that. And I kind of came to this just come to Jesus meeting with myself and said, I'm not in charge of that. Like, if that thing goes and reaches like a bazillion other people, that's not on me. And if I comment on that thing and say, you know what, that the origins of that article came from Bedrock and it's not true, I've actually helped perpetuate the life cycle of that post. And so for me, it's about self-control. It's about, I don't have to fix everything out there. The other thing I think is important, and you know, we've just been through 2 years of, you know, or a couple, 3 or 4 years of listen to understand, not to respond, and everybody, you know, in the height of all of the political rhetoric and all of that. That's all an inside job. I don't think we do that for anyone else. I do that for myself. Some days I fail miserably. Other days I do a rock star job. And every day I think, you know, I can read something on any given day that just makes my blood boil. And it's up to me to model what is appropriate behavior. And it's up to me to walk away and say nothing if I think that any comment is just not going to be productive. Yeah. So
I get you. Now, by the way,
even as hard as it can be sometimes.
I know.
Now, a slight deviation, Melissa. We've said this. I know why we say it the way we say it, but you repeated this phrase again. Our youth, their mind is not done cooking. And if I would have said that 10 years ago or 25 years ago in a different context, it would have meant something different. But anyway.
Yeah.
So who else? Is it, should we not? Why?
I can see certain circumstances where I would, if it was someone I was close to and I saw them making mistakes, I might point it out. I would hesitate, however, because you don't know what type of reaction you're going to get. You don't want to create that conflict. But that's one circumstance where I might, if it was a business colleague or a personal friend or a family member who posted crazy stuff. And when I say crazy, I don't just mean things I disagree with. I snooze people all the time that post things that I generally kind of agree with. The disinformation I'm actually amused at how much we are upset about disinformation on social media, because it's like, that's the most likely place I would think where everyone can post anything. I see plenty of disinformation, misinformation from my perspective on a lot of sources. So I take it with a grain of salt on social media. I would say one thing, I believe that my brain is now fully cooked, so I'm prepared to handle whatever it throws at me.
You know, Mark, you bring up something that's really important. We have a room full of marketers here, or people who understand, you know, study the brain and how it affects people's decisions, which is marketing. And the majority of the people who are on social media, first of all, who say they understand marketing, they don't. Yeah. They really do take a lot of that stuff verbatim. If it comes from their camp, if it comes from one of their tribes, they just believe it. And I had a guy a couple of years ago, it was during the last presidential election cycle, and he was sharing something, and I snoozed him. And somehow on Facebook, he got back in my feed, and he shared something that was one of those. I mean, it was just astronomically you have to be a bonehead, or just, X-Files want to believe something this astronomically stupid. And so I DM'd him and I said, hey man, what's up with this? I don't think you actually think this is true, because this is kind of silly. Like, I was trying to give him an out. This is silly.
Yeah.
And he came back and said something that made it very clear that he knew it wasn't true, but he thought it was funny to share anyway. And I said, well, the problem is you're sharing it, and some other people are going to A, believe it, and B, they're going to believe you believe it. And he said, well, I don't care about the latter. Basically, he said the ends justify the means. If it helps turn people away from one candidate, he's fine sharing it no matter how bad it is. And it's one of the few people I've literally had to unfriend and walk away from in my life. And it was really sad.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah.
Otherwise, not a bonehead, very smart person, actually an ex-teacher. But he made a conscious decision to fly the flag for his tribe, no matter the outcome.
And you went the route of, maybe I want to help this guy. And then you discovered that help was falling on deaf ears or whatever. That's a good way to put it. Yeah. So cool. I made a decision for myself. Kristen, I haven't got your insight on that.
The only people that I think I have, and I'm going to use the word right, to call out are my children.
Yeah.
And it is, I've tried it with my mom. I've said things to her on the QT. I've tried it with my elderly aunt. I have tried, and they just keep doing it. And they don't care. They're not fact checking. I can't tell y'all how many Snopes links dropped over the past 4 or 5 years. I just finally said, I'm done. Now, there were definitely times, especially before the girls graduated high school, et cetera. I'll remember one, my oldest, when she had her senior beach trip. Some of those pictures showed up, and I kind of sent her a DM, and I said, you probably don't want your grandmother seeing these. And she's like, but I didn't post. I'm like, your friend, that's a big thing that the young ones, they don't realize, is that their friends are tagging them. And so while they're being very prudentious with what they post, their friends over there are like throwing them under a bus unknowingly. So I was just like, well, you might want to tell her to remove that tag before your grandmother sees it, because I don't know about y'all, but my those 70 and up, I think all they do is this all day, because if I post something like within 30 seconds, they like it, and I'm like, wow, what are y'all doing?
Yeah, I had that 80-year-old uncle that, he's like waiting for me every time I share, or my daughters, so it's pretty wild. So,
so really, those are anybody else I've just given up. It's not my place. It's not worth the angst. It's not worth it's just not worth it. So, the young people in my circle, those are the only ones that I will take the time, and because it's an education, they don't know better.
Yeah, I'm with you. I feel
Teddy, one more thing to add to that. There was one, I did have a conversation with someone who had liked an article, and it was clear to me, because this person liked the article, I went through and read the article, and I'm reading the article going, what in the hell do they like about this article? This is like nuts, right? And so it was on LinkedIn, and I sent a LinkedIn message, and said, did you really mean to like this article? And the response was, oh, I guess maybe I didn't read it carefully. Okay, you should probably go read that article right now. Yeah. And, it's a really good reminder that you just don't like something because someone else posted it, or someone else liked it, or because, the headline is catchy. That's our reputation. Like, you liked that thing, and that is your reputation.
Yeah. And we could go on for a long time with this conversation and all these talking points. And there's probably a bunch of other talking points that align with this as well. And something just popped in my mind. Aren't we in the what's it called? The second year? I can't remember what they call it. Of politics, the election cycle.
Midterm elections.
Midterm.
Yeah. Midterm. That's the word. We're at the midterm. So we have 2 more years before it explodes again. I just want to remind everybody of that.
About 6 months, probably.
Yeah.
Before it all starts to explode.
But I asked you guys to come to this conversation because I just really think it's important for all of us to ask ourselves, why are they sharing that? What's their purpose? What are they trying to achieve? And if you feel, and this is infrequent, that they're sharing something really for a conversation, then maybe participate in the conversation. But I remember I just said that's very infrequent. So on the other side of why do people do what they do, I'm with all of you. A, I won't engage in those conversations. B, as we talked about, should I help people get over their problem? No, I'm responsible for myself. And I maybe, to use Kristen's words, have a little bit of a right to tell my wife and my 4 daughters, maybe by association, the son-in-laws, that it might not be a good thing for them to have done and to correct it. But it's all about, people have different reasons than what we have, and we have to accept that they have those reasons. We don't have to accept being a part of it. So,
Exactly.
closing statements, anybody?
As for myself, I pledge moving forward to only troll you on social media.
And I'm happy to be that for you, buddy.
Thank you.
Yeah. So anybody else, any closing statement or thought that we didn't share that you had on your mind?
Great conversation.
Yeah. And it could go on for on and on as well. So Kristen, Melissa, Mark, Philip, thank you very much. I appreciate all of you.